Hey,
Hello. Hey, Mian, what's up? There you
can you
go.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
So
Wow,
what's
long time
up?
no see. How's life?
Life's good, honestly. Like, I'm on my second semester here in Brazil. This interview is basically just to like show the students, first year students, like how a real architect works and how his day-to-day life is. Because I was gonna interview my dad, but then the teacher was like, nah, you can't interview your dad because that's too easy. So I'm like, let me interview me and then give him another point of view, like of architecture, not just here in Brazil. So that's what I decided to do.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, your questions they're all very important. So I try to answer them as best as I can. But obviously, yeah, we can go through each of them on the video chat too. But I figured you having them in writing would help you kind of put the ideas together on paper if you needed to.
Yeah, exactly. So for the first question, I asked, in what types of project do you specialize in? Which type do you mostly enjoy designing?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I come from a architect and artist background. I used to do a lot of painting and architecture because there are a few kind of relationships between the two. A lot of offices that I've worked at are not limited to just architecture. So, for example, when I worked at OMA, they're very heavily handed with architecture, but they also have their counterpart, AMO, which is like a cultural type of office. They do branding, they design spaces for Prada, but it's not very much straightforward architecture as well. So that was my first introduction of how architecture and culture and art can really collide. And that's a very important aspect because as an architect, I think you also have to think of many other things. You can't just think of architecture as
just designing buildings. Exactly.
And architecture can also be, a canopy. It can be a chair. It can be sculpture. So these are things that there are kind of degrees of separation between the two, but there are a lot of degrees of overlap.
Exactly.
So for us, we're interested in a range of kind of projects. We design things from furniture to museums, and they're all kind of uniquely its own story and project. What do I most enjoy? I would say projects that really have the ability to blend in with nature and environment, and that can really be anything. That could be a park. That can be a house that gets built into the landscape. That can be an assortment of projects. But I would say if there was a specific answer of what type of building we enjoy building, I don't think there's really an answer for that because it's really more of how the building responds or how the project responds to the environment. And I think that's what we're most interested in.
Yeah, I also believe that architecture is not just the building itself, but how it relates with its surroundings.
That's an issue that New York City is having now. Is that the newly finished Hudson Yards? Next time you're back in the city, we can take a tour of it. But it's a several block area of new construction, and there's high-rise skyscrapers. There's also the vessel, the shed. There's a commercial component. There's a plaza, but it all arrived at once so quickly. And the critique from a lot of other architects and just people who live in the area say, there's a lack of identity with this neighborhood because it's all new kind of individual projects that.
Exactly. I feel like New York. I feel like New York is like made up of like buildings that they want to like stand out on their own, not just like they want to harmonize with the surrounding, and that's maybe why that's happening.
That's a big challenge in very densely populated cities. I mean, China, Shanghai, Beijing is like that too. Most big cities, they have an issue with that. But it's also, you try to, I think what's important is to try to keep neighborhoods authentically they're still their identity. But yeah, so that's, I mean, I think, yeah, and you have the luxury of being in like the heartland of Oscar Niemeyer's work, and it's a lot. There's some incredible, the stuff he does, you know, is almost alien in a way, but he's almost built his own environment.
Exactly.
And to be able to touch that environment is almost impossible, because whatever you put in there is going to feel like a foreign object, no matter how similar you try to kind of play along with it.
They compare the Praça dos Três Poderes, that's where the Congress and the President stays, as a museum, open sky museum, because there's like a bunch of work architecture, and as you go by, you could admire it.
Right.
So, second question, it's, do you only design projects, or do you execute like the construction as well?
Right, so we are a relatively small company. I have anywhere between 3 to 8 people working for me at a given time. And obviously, as a smaller scale office, it's important for us to try to remain in the process of the project from beginning to end as much as possible, because we don't want to lose the integrity of our ideas and vision if we let someone else handle it at a certain point. But that said, depending on the size, the scale, the timeline of the project, usually architects and music, we will hire a general contractor to build the space, and we are usually hired towards that portion to oversee the construction. So we will basically be the management team to make sure that things are going fluidly, things are built on time, things are arriving on time. If there are any issues, things are not built properly, we have to make sure that we catch those mistakes before it goes on too long. So yeah, depending on the project, we will be part of that construction process, but we don't physically, typically, use our hands to build the project ourselves.
Yeah, of course. But you guys have your own team and your own construction workers that you guys hire, and so you can work with you guys.
So, for example, we just finished this installation in Brooklyn, those arched panels. I'm not sure if you saw them.
No.
But we didn't hire a contractor. We hired a fabricator that works with metal. And once he fabricated the panels, I had some of my people along with theirs to do the physical construction of the project. But that's a small project, so depending on the size of the project, we would be much more immersed in that in that phase, or we may just be kind of the managerial position. But that's pretty typical. But I think as an architect, as a designer, as even an interior designer, it's important to kind of be part of those processes as much as you can, because it really makes you understand and respect how long things take.
Exactly.
I think the process and the price points and those kind of things.
I believe that the architect needs to have a little bit of knowledge of everything that's going around, of psychology, of the construction, of everything. Because once, for example, psychology, he has to know the client, he has to know what the client's thinking and how he's gonna react to certain spaces. If he knows the construction, for example, concrete, he needs to know how long the concrete takes to curate, what he can do with concrete and stuff like that. So I feel like architecture is a link of everything that surrounds us nowadays.
And that's why you're taking classes that you may not enjoy taking.
Exactly.
Now. 100 years ago, architects embodied the profession of many professions that we have now. So an architect 100 years ago, the architect would be the interior designer, the landscape designer, the lighting designer,
everything,
the mill worker, everything. And now we have landscape architecture offices. We have people who actually build millwork,
and they're specialized in that area.
Different professions now, right? But at the end of the day, the architect still remains kind of the umbrella person to ensure that things are orchestrated and played together well and fluidly. So yeah, that's why we go to school.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to take those math classes, instruction classes that honestly, at a certain point in your career, you may never pick up a calculator again, but you need to know how things work.
You need to know, just like in case something happens, you got some knowledge of that somewhere in there, right? So that's important.
Exactly.
Question number 3 would be, what are your biggest difficulties encountered at the beginning of your career and currently?
So that is a very tough question. I think it will really depend on. I think it's a unique challenge for everybody because, like you said, psychology, for example, right? Everybody thinks in a different way. People handle people in a different way. I think the challenge that will always remain, and it's something that we as people always need to work better on, is simply just communication. It's important to be able to illustrate and describe a project to a client, and that's part of communication. You should be able to have a deck of images, and whether that's a successful deck of images, you may not need to open your mouth at all. It's very selfless.
Sometimes images could speak for themselves in a way.
Exactly, but your words are also very important. But to that point, I think a lot of architects want to make sure that the client is happy, and at times, you may overpromise certain timelines. You may overpromise what some things may cost, but it's important to kind of keep an open dialogue of transparency so that the expectations versus what the reality is not going to cause surprises down the road. And a lot of times, I think designers will try to compensate for that component, and the client will be shocked of how long something will take to build. A lot of clients don't understand the process of designing to figuring out how much things will cost to how long things will be built. Sometimes a client will come to me and say, I would like to have this 4-bedroom house. I would like to move in 8 months. And you go,
not happening.
It's great. That's a great timeline.
And that's our job, like to educate the client, because a lot of people don't know.
Because you don't also want to say, it's going to take much longer because it's going to affect what the client thinks of potentially your capabilities. But it's also very important to make sure that you set certain expectations so that there are no surprises. And there will always be surprises. There will always be things that there will always be mistakes. There will always be mistakes, no matter how OCD you are. But it's important to try to catch them yourself as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, your dad's an architect. I'm sure you get a glimpse of kind of the reality of the stresses that he faces.
Exactly.
Lack of communication, or sometimes it's one side or the other. But communication is a skill that will help you in the long run for everything.
And it's something that you're like
building is so much easier than actually communicating with someone properly, because you're working on the design much more introspectively on your own. Once the second or third person steps into the room, how do you communicate that with someone, and how do you ensure that the process flows smoothly? That's all on you, and that's an
issue I have. Like working with groups, I feel like kind of like blocks me in a way. I'm like, okay, let me just do it. Let me just design, and you help me out with ideas. But like sometimes it blocks me, like working and telling what people to do and stuff like that. That blocks me a lot sometimes.
That's something that, because you're so young, you're still in school, and that is something that you will definitely need to face every day as an architect. You will need to. There will be 20 battles that you want to win, because each battle is a Pablo battle. If you get that battle, that's yours. That's your signature. That's your design. That's your component. But there will be times where you won't win certain battles, and you have to let someone else take ownership over it. And a successful architect will be able to work collaboratively with someone that may not agree with you at all. And that's something that you may have to deal with every day. And it is a very challenging aspect of this profession. But like you said, psychology, right? I think a skill that is very important in architecture is how we communicate with people.
Exactly.
And you have to be able to collaborate with people. Not even just designers. The engineer may tell you, you want these windows to be this wide apart without a column, but he's going to say, you need a column right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to say? No way. That's going to completely screw up my vision.
Yeah.
You're going to have to figure out.
You're going to have to figure out other ways to get.
Yeah, so it's at the end of the day, definitely swallow your pride and make sure that you can collaborate.
Stay humble. Talking about pride.
I mean, you are a very powerful, very strong student, but you definitely had it's Pablo's way or the highway.
Yo,
because you know what? A lot of students later down the line, because they're so stressed out, they're so tired of working in groups, they give up on that.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of let that go. They go, you know what? The Pablo thing, good, but I just want to go out and party. This is too stressful, and they lose that edge. And I think at the end of the day, it's more important to keep that edge and be stubborn. It's important to be stubborn, but also, there's a balance between the two. So, I mean, I was really sad to hear that you left NJIT because I wanted to go back and see what type of work that you and Gerard and Faye and the guys were working on. Because you did do a few group projects with them.
Yeah.
Remember the one that we divided the site into 4 pieces?
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing was that none of your projects
had correlation.
With each other.
Yeah.
It was like it was 4 very individual projects.
The next question is, how is your relationship with the clients? I think this ties in with another question, maybe about your creative process.
Yes, that's what I had in the next one.
Yeah.
Our creative process is pretty loose. We don't try to follow a formula. I think every project has its own unique story. We don't tend to stylize our projects in a way that when you see it, you go, oh, that's an office media project. Mm-hmm. I think what Calatrava or what Frank Gehry does is absolutely incredible in terms of a spectacle of a piece of architecture. But when you see their work, you know it is Gehry, or it's Calatrava, or Zaha, or whomever. But I think for us, we take a slightly different approach, where the building, the park, the museum, the furniture, etc., should really communicate with its surroundings, the landscape, the environment, the culture of where the people are from. And I think that's important to have a symbiotic relationship between the people and the environment and the building. Otherwise, you lose the harmony of what the building is supposed to be. Plus, that is kind of our creative process. It doesn't necessarily answer your question, but I think that's kind of...
It makes sense though, because it's like we don't have a certain formula to like, okay, so first we do this, second we do that, third we do that. It depends on the client and how the client is that you're going to take the approach of the project, right? And how your creative process is going to lead you and take you.
Right, and if you look at some of the work we do, each project has kind of its own direction, but it's also taking certain fundamental positions that makes the work that we do in our office pretty cohesive. And I think that's the kind of fine line that we try to kind of walk, is how can we keep the project authentic to itself, but also try to inject a bit of our specific viewpoints on what architecture should be. And with those two, that's kind of our creative process.
I was taking a look at the Metal House it was an Arc Daily, and like, for example, for that project, what were like the encounters you guys had and the concept you guys had in the beginning, and how was the client for that project itself?
Sure. That neighborhood, the neighborhood's called Potomac Manors. I think a few years ago, Business Insider listed it as, I think, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. So most of the houses are between 10 and 20,000 square feet. They're enormous, enormous houses. It's a pretty small neighborhood as well. And so my client, whom is relatively younger than the other owners of the homes in the same neighborhood, had a much more different viewpoint on where and how they wanted to live. They travel the world. They love, going to the beach, going traveling, and they also host a lot of fundraisers and parties. For example, I think just 6 months ago they hosted a 150-person 6-course dinner with this Michelin star chef to raise money for hungry kids. Right, so this house, in a way, isn't just for a family to live in, but they're also using it as a venue to do good. So the house is kind of designed around a way to be flexible in a private type of residential home, but also to be able to be used as a venue. But they didn't want the house to look and feel so enormous. They wanted the house to kind of be, my favorite word, humble to the rest of the neighborhood. So it's a 1-story house. It has wood louvers, so it really lets the inside and outside breathe during the summer, during the kind of much more nicer parts of the months. And because the house is 1 story, even though the house is 1 story, the ceilings are 11 feet high. So when you come in, it's very grand. But when you see it from a distance, because it's this kind of low 1-story bar, 1-story bar, it feels much more earthened. And it sits upon kind of the hillside, and we wanted to basically make it feel like the house has been there for 100 years, have the kind of landscape grow in, around, and on top of it. So it was this kind of idea of try to connect how it functions with the environment and the surroundings, but also conceptually, this house is not also just a house. It's a place where
people come together.
Use it as a venue. And it's basically trying to break a lot of barriers of what a typical home in that neighborhood is. The funny thing with that house is that once it was complete, some of the neighbors, they did not respond to the house very well because it did not look like a 20,000 square foot mansion. And they felt that the house did not belong in the neighborhood. They actually went to, I think my client's brother, who was their neighbor, and said, "Who is building this modern piece of blank?" Once it was done, once it was built, a lot of people in the neighborhood wanted to take a tour of the house because it looked like it was still under construction because the wood louvers looks like it's a frame. So people would actually drive by and take photos of it and ask one client if they could have a tour of the house. So now I think they've responded more positively to it because they just didn't have an expectation of what this house would be. But yeah, that was our first project in our studio.
For real?
Yeah, and it's a 7,000 square foot home with about almost 10,000 square feet of outdoor spaces. So it's a pretty large project. It's in the middle of a suburban neighborhood in Maryland, but we wanted to make you feel like when you stepped out to the pool deck and the trees that grow out from the deck, that you're almost in like a resort. You're not in the middle of Maryland suburbs. You do feel like you're transported to a different place, and that for us was also very important for the client.
The next question is, what are your main references, national and international?
We were inspired by both architects and artists. It's important to be inspired by things that are not directly associated with architecture. When I went to school, I was always inspired by Louis Kahn, Tado Ando, Rem Koolhaas. There's a studio, an ensemble studio, you should look them up. And a lot of their work is almost growing architecture in a way. So this one house that you should definitely check out, it's incredible. It's called the Truffle House. And what they did was they took all these bales of hay and piled it into this dome. And then they poured concrete on top of this dome of hay. And then they dug a little hole out, cut it, and then had this cow eat the hay out of the once it was dried. And they basically created this cave and turned it into this little apartment. So that is such a non-direct idea of what architecture is. You know, it's
Exactly.
not a typical construction process, but it really harnesses the ideas of how the environment, even how animals can contribute to architecture. And
Exactly.
I think that's a very extreme example, but that's also how the environment and architecture should work. There's no waste, right? You know, the cow is eating the hay, and you know, it's this kind of symbiotic relationship between so many different lives, and I think that's very important.
Next question is, if you can give architecture students one advice, what would that advice be?
Oh man, that's a tough one too, right?
Stay humble.
Yeah, you know, it's staying humble has a fine line too, because you can easily be trampled by other voices if you stay too humble.
Too humble.
I think for me, I had a very unique experience in my undergraduate years where I think I learned a lot from my school, but I think also it was a very traditional viewpoint of what architecture should be, and I completely respect that form and direction of architecture. But for me, at a certain point, I decided to stay more focused on what I believed in, even if it contradicted what my professors had to say. I think it's important to take risks and trust yourself in what your ideas are.
That's what I always say. Like, for example, take risks now, because, okay, now it's college. Worst case scenario, you get like a lower grade, but like sometimes it's harder to take risks when you're actually working, because you're like, what if this doesn't work out, you know? So it's the time to take risks is like now.
When you're in school, you're in an infinite playground of possibility. You can do anything you like. You can do things that you know will be received negatively by your professors. But it's one moment in your career and in your study that you're able to. I think one of the most fascinating things is if you come up with an idea that your professor will say, I don't know if this is a strong idea. I don't know if this is if this concept has integrity. But if you believe in that idea so strongly and develop it, your whole goal is to prove that idea to people who don't believe it. That's very important, and I think that would be my advice. My advice would be, if you are hesitant on a direction or an idea because of what other people say, but you yourself believe it, you need to keep going with it. You got to push that thing until everybody will believe it. And even if people don't believe it, at least you can leave that class being happy with that project yourself.
Exactly.
Right? And I think you definitely did that with a few of your projects. You know, you definitely broke the mold in certain projects that, when I saw your project in midterm, I don't remember which one it was, but several of them had this kind of direction. It was very different from what the other students were doing, but you kept pushing that idea, and you developed it, and it became a very successful and strong project. But if you listened to the voices around you and said, you know, maybe they're right, there's a lot of problems with this, I need to start over, you've basically kind of shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I think it's very important to, and it's okay to back out of something if you yourself realize halfway through that it might not be right. That's okay, but it should be you that's making that decision.
That's what happened with this semester. On this project, we're doing collective housing, and I wanted to have a concept that areas of the apartment itself, and then there's areas of like hanging out and stuff like that. And I wanted that not to be like 100% separated. I wanted those areas to be like hugging the building itself, that from the street you could see movement in the building, you know? And so I did that. And so what I did was I had this ramp going around the whole building, hugging the building, and then in the space of the ramp I had the apartment buildings. And that was my concept. And then when I started like taking forward the project, I saw that some windows of the apartments ended up going directly inside the hallways. And that was a big problem, because no one wants windows directly to the hallway and some kids running around and making noise. And so I tried to fix that the best way possible, but there was no way, because the ramps were like every side of the building, there was ramps hugging the building. So I was like, you know what, I want to still continue the concept as stairs and ramps as a place for people to gather, but I gotta change the actual project itself, and that's what I sent you, the one that has the ramp in the front.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's not giving up an idea because the concept is the same.
Mm-hmm.
If I would say how you handled it was that you developed your concept,
Mm-hmm.
right? You didn't change your concept. You
Exactly.
developed it to make it better. So I do remember seeing that.
So, and then for the next and last question, what's the process to get your license in the U.S. after you finish college?
Right. So it's kind of a slightly more complicated answer. So in the U.S., there's typically two routes. You can either go to a 5-year accredited degree.
Uh-huh.
So once you do the 5-year undergrad, you're able to go through your internships and your work experience to gain certain work hours. And once you gain those certain work hours, you take a multi-part exam.
Mm-hmm.
And once you take that multi-part exam, you're now licensed, and you're licensed per state. So if you take the exam for the state of California, you're only licensed in the state of California. If you want to do work in Pennsylvania, you will need to retake that exam for the state of Pennsylvania. It's kind of like a law degree. But if you did an architecture background, let's say it's a 4-year degree, not a 5-year, you can typically do like a 2-year graduate school program.
Okay.
Which is an MR1, I believe. So that's kind of the two directions.
How many exams are there? Just one?
Say
Or is
that
it
again?
multiple exams?
Yeah, so I think back in the day it was a 9-part exam, 9 different segments of exams,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they've now consolidated to be less. So usually when you start your exam, the first one,
Mm-hmm.
they give you 5 years. So you have to take all of the exams within 5 years.
Uh-huh.
If you don't finish all the exams within 5 years, you basically have to start over. It's a very laborious process, but this is how it's been for a long time. In the U.S., it's probably the most strict in terms of that process. I know that when I worked in the Netherlands, I was actually technically still in school, but
Mm-hmm.
they gave me an architect's registration, so I was technically an architect. So depending on where you are, but the U.S. is they're very strict.
Mm-hmm.
It's with the AIA and carbon and everything.
That would be all.
Do you want to come back to?
Honestly,
States at some
I don't
point?
know, because for example, I feel like NGIT and in general, like it's very conceptual, and let's look at form and how this form becomes. At least first year was like, right? It's very like how you can see spaces has become architecture, but here in Brazil it's like very technical, and like you learn, and then you learn the norms and everything. So I feel like as of now, I'm getting a lot of experience in that area here.
There's a lot of things you're learning now that
Uh-huh.
you would have a much harder time finding that experience in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I think NGAIT's curriculum is spectacular. I
Yeah.
think they hop you into the digital format so quickly.
Exactly.
Also,
That was something that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because
But
when I
also,
came here,
on the other side of it, a lot of students lack how to properly draw something on paper. And, what if you need to communicate an idea with a client and you don't have your computer?
exactly.
It's hard. And I think that was a big challenge for a lot of students in your class was, from learning how to walk, they quickly had to learn how to run.
Everything was like boom, 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 really fast.
Students didn't even know. It was so like most students. It was the first time they ever touched CAD or Rhino,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like almost learning how to draw for the first time. And I think it's important to have that balance. And I think you were able to do that very well as a lot of other students in your class. For me, I think another kind of piece of advice is that whenever you work in an office, treat the office that you work at almost like a class.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you work for Zaha,
Mm-hmm.
right? You learn, you gain experience from that office, you learn how that office works, and then you should move on
Mm-hmm.
in a year or two. Find another architect or company, or if you want to go small residential to big commercial, or someone much more unique. you hop to another office, you learn what they know, and you hop to a different office. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to learn what you want to do at the end of the day. And it's important to see a broad spectrum of offices before you decide, is that what I want to do for the rest of my life? Maybe not. So it's important to hop around as much as you can in the beginning.
Get the most experience.
Never stay in one place more than a few years, for sure.
That's a good advice. For my last, I just thought of another question. Cause here in Brazil, like for example, they all like students for modeling, they use SketchUp. They're always on SketchUp.
Yeah.
So what like modeling softwares? What softwares do you guys at mian office use?
We use a lot of Rhino, CAD. Those two would be the main two softwares.
I'm currently using ArchiCAD.
Yeah.
Cause like for example, as you said, BIM modeling programs are like, it's like stepping over AutoCAD, because like for example, the time you spend, okay, you draw the plan, then you have to draw a section, so you pull the lines down to draw a section, draw an elevation. Something changes, you got to change everything in all the drawings.
Yeah.
And you could spend more time creating than focusing, I still got to do these drawings because everything's being done at the same time. So that's a plus.
But once you have a model, when you change one thing, it's mirrored in everything else, and it creates all your drawings for you. So it's
taking over.
It's definitely the future, the software of the future, even though it's been around for so.
To close off, I want to thank you for this interview. It was really good, and thanks again, Mian. When I go to the US, I'll give you a call so we can meet up.
For sure. And if you're in Brazil, I'll hit you up because.
Alright, awesome. Let me know.
I've been meaning to go down there, but it's been a busy year.
I'm in the capital, Brasilia, so like.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, like for example, there's a lot of architecture to see, but like there's a lot of things to do in general. But it's worth staying here like 2 days, just take a look around and just So.
Great. All right. Well, good luck with all your projects, and definitely, if you need to, always send something over if you need me to yell at you.
I got you.
I'll gladly do it.
Thanks again, Mian. Take care.
All right, man.
Peace out.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Take care.